Hi, Aldo. Welcome.
How are you?
I am great. Great to have you here. And thank you all for joining us. It's another great turnout here on a Monday night, 8 o'clock. And very happy to be joined by Aldo Sohm, the wine director, head sommelier at Le Bernardin, of course, partner, owner of Aldo Sohm's Wine Bar. And we look forward to joining him there in the very near future. But right now, this is probably the only time you get to talk to Aldo at 8 o'clock at night, unless you are on the floor of Bernardin ordering a very expensive bottle. So we are very grateful for that, and thank you for joining us tonight.
It's kind of surreal, yeah, but I enjoy it.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for coming out. You know, I know you got outside. Aldo's an avid biker, and he bikes many more kilometers a day than I do in a year, and that's why he's very healthy and fit. And I just like to sit in a chair. But, you know, we are very excited to be talking about Austrian wine and Gruner Veltliner, which a little secret is I tend to drink these wines. I drink Gruner like all the time at home. And it is a great thrill to have Aldo here, you know, join us to kind of navigate through this before we kind of start tasting some wines together. I hope some of you have some Gruners open this evening. A little bit about what Aldo's doing right now. He's got his own website, aldosohm.com. You should definitely check out. And he's got an amazing new book called Wine Simple, a totally approachable guide to wine from a world-class sommelier. And what I like about this book is it's not only for beginners in wine, but it's also a lot of people who drink a lot of fine wine. They drink a lot of great wine, whether, you know, fine wine could be $30, $40 a bottle. It could be $300, $400, right? And people have a tough time expressing themselves. And I think this book is like a great book to read when you really want to learn more expression, more adjectives, more kind of how to be comfortable and confident in the world of wine with how you communicate about it. So you can get that on his website. Please check it out. And Aldo, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you've been in New York for a while. You grew up in Austria. When did you move here to New York, actually?
I moved, well, let me tell you the main reason why I relocated. I grew up in Austria, did my sommelier there. Master sommelier was not a thing back then because in Europe, you know, education is government controlled. I know here it's not. So I did sommelier competitions, but to compete in a competition, you're not allowed to compete in your native language. You have to compete in a foreign language. And my English was okay, but not good enough. And I saw the top guys, they were living in a different foreign country. And with age 33, I said, I can do that too. And that's why I came to the United States, much to the not understanding. My best friend said London wasn't far enough for you. But from London, I didn't get the right feeling. The emotions weren't really there. New York seemed to be exciting.
Snobby British people didn't mix well with
I don't want to say snobby, but I just, you know, the instinct wasn't there.
We love the British people.
So that being said, on July 4, 2004, I came to the United States with an 18-month visa, and my first boss told me, just so you know, you're staying here. And then a couple of years after, Eric Pair said something similar by making me partner to the wine bar, and here we are.
Nice, nice. So you actually studied wine in Austria. You fell in love with wine in Austria before coming to the United States.
Absolutely. No. I was up and running. I won a couple of times Best Sommelier in Austria, and that's when I relocated to the US. So and it's quite a process.
You grew up on Gruner, basically, right?
I have that in my veins.
Yes, I do too, usually, at least 2 or 3 nights a week, actually. I'm a huge fan of the wines, of Austrian wines, and like I drink them all the time at home. And so we have 3 that we're going to taste tonight. Maybe you can kind of describe a little bit about the grape and why is it only like grown in Austria? Why is it really not grown anywhere else? And
that's an interesting question. Gruner Veltliner is often known, I mean, Americans often are being critical for a moment. To read a label like that, for Americans, that's just intimidating right from the start. You haven't even purchased the bottle. And again, this is actually a straightforward bottle. This is not even a bad one. It's just intimidating, you know, all the different nouns and its long words. So people shy away from it. To me, and I write this actually in Wine Simple quite a good amount, is if you really want to cut deals, you have to go to Austria, you have to drink Gruner Veltliner. That's one of the grapes. Very hard to cut a deal right now in Burgundy. You know, rightfully so in many cases, but it's very hard. So, and also, you know, if you really want to have a good food pairing wine, Austrian wine is really good. I mean, it's a no-brainer. There's only one one wine which is better in terms of food pairings, which I deal with it on a daily basis at Le Bernardin, is champagne. That's the only other one which works. Everything else, Gruner Veltliner surpasses in the pairing. So if you're at home, you know, I mean, look, we don't have a wine pairing at home. We have a salad or we have a little protein with it. A Gruner Veltliner, depending on what style, will always work. Now, why doesn't it do very well in other countries? Gruner Veltliner, and I'm quoting actually Mr. Alzinger, who said to me once, look, Gruner Veltliner likes the luxury, likes the great sites. If you put a Gruner Veltliner up in the very top of the Kellerberg, it will do poorly because it lost the luxury. Riesling, on the other hand, lost the pain. You have to put Riesling into a poor site because then, you know, the wine, the plant itself works harder, works stronger. So it's very often interesting to, if you have one producer tasting Riesling and Gruner Veltliner from the same site, and you'll see immediately what I mean with that. Also, of course, you know, we're tasting 3 Wachau wines here, which the Wachau, not to mention, is one of the most traditional, also one of the smaller regions in Austria. And it's rather unique because it's basically influenced by the river Danube. And they're very distinct. Gruner Veltliner right now is quite trendy, also among the natural wave. Whether you favor that or not, but young winemakers, especially in the Burgenland plant, have a lot of Gruner Veltliner holdings, and it tastes more like Chardonnay from Macon or Chenin Blanc in that kind of area. It's very hard to put your finger on, especially when you go there to the Leiterberg. But also if you go to the Weinviertel, they're easy peppery wines, which they always describe this kind of white pepper component. With climate change, that kind of faded away. And I mean, we have 3 really interesting and great examples where I tasted it before and you don't find almost any white pepper except for one. Just a slight hint to it, because wines become riper and Gruner Veltliner has a tendency to become ripe very quickly. And also the acidity, you have to be really careful by harvesting on getting acidity still on, because it lost the luxury sides.
But the wines age very well. I mean, I happen, you know, we have 3 wines here that we're going to start to get into, and one of them actually, I don't have the same vintage. You have the current release, 2018. I happen to have the 2000, I think, in 12 here of the Alzinger, you know. But I mean, these wines age.
Did this bottle didn't make it to New York? I just have to ask a little.
There's some different supply chain here working. So, you know, we're trying, you know, we occasionally mess up the vintage on the delivery. That's what happens once in a while.
How come you didn't screw this up on my bottle?
Oh, you know, you want the 12, right? You know, well,
the 12.
yeah.
Didn't make it to Brooklyn.
No, that's the interesting part. I mean, look, Gruner Veltliner ages incredibly well. And it's just not commonly known. It's not actually super difficult. It's difficult and not crazy difficult. I know it's an oxymoron, but to find Gruner Veltliners with a little bit of age in the American market is not super difficult. Just go on an Acker auction, you find it there randomly. It's a spoiler alert for John. No, but you find it there. I buy it occasionally there when I see him. But the only thing what gets hard is wine from the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s are hard. I mean, but honestly, when I go, you know, when I was going to restaurants in New York, when I go with my family or something, I'm just kind of like low key, chilling out, not going with collectors or clients or something. I will always order a Gruner Veltliner off the list because I know I'm going to get a tasty wine that's not too crazily expensive and just delivers satisfaction. Even some of these, you know, super cheap ones that are like mass marketed or more mass produced wines, you can get on a restaurant list for like what, $40, $50, and they're good. They're easy to drink. You know, it's just like, it's no problem. I mean, I think it really is one of the great undiscovered, you know, gems of the fine wine world, because I do think the Gruners are fine wines, and I love them. I drink them all the time.
I had this in my book, actually. I mentioned this. Typically, when I went once to my barber, and that was the last appointment, and I like to mess with him a little bit. So I said, "Do you want a glass of wine?" And he said to me, "Sure," while he was finishing up another client. So I walked across the street in Brooklyn, and I had no idea. So I went into a random store, and sadly, I had a really hard time just to find a Sancerre. I thought, oh boy, not even the rosés were anything. And then I discovered a Gruner Veltliner for $15. It was the cheapest bottle in that store on top of it. But I knew the wine, the vintage was good. So I bought it. And so I started pouring this for everyone. And they said, oh my God, this is a rather delicious wine. What is this? And I told them Gruner Veltliner. They obviously butchered the name right there. And I wrote this up in the book. It's funny, you know, it's just so giving. It's easy to spend $30 on a Sancerre, and it's kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
So that's what I've often learned. And again, not to downgrade Sancerre, because I love Sancerres, but coming quickly back in one thing, if you find Gruner Veltliners from Knoll or from Alzing, it's hard to get. From the 80s, buy, no matter what. I brought actually two sommelier friends last year. In the afternoon, I brought the Gruner Veltliner cabinet from Knoll at 1990, and they were mocking me because, of course, the Austrian brings Austrian wine, and they all were drinking Koch Dury and Rouleau. And after the Koch, I said, "Don't you guys want to have a Riesling? What do you want to drink right now?" And of course, it was actually Daniel Jonas and Raj Veda. They said, nah, we don't want to have the Austrian. They wanted to have a von Schubert. And it turned out to be correct. I said, guys, you want to stay playing here right now, or should we have a glass of wine? How about that? And then, you know, following a Koch Perrier. And that wine just knocked everything out. It was just crazy. Even both were just flabbergasted by it. And they still talk about it.
Yeah. The Austrian wine knocked the Koch Perrier out, or
yeah, I mean, listen. Of course, it's an unfair comparison because you have Riesling; it's a much more aromatic grape, but it didn't fall off the cliff.
Right.
Typically, that knocks. I mean, after Koch, the show is over.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, these are three great wines here we're tasting. I don't know how many people have the wines. We're working on that. We're going to get the schedule of the wines we're drinking ahead of time, so people can start to buy the wines and taste them with us and such. But we have three great wines. We're going to start with the Schweiger, right? Gruner Veltliner, Ried, Kolmwitz, Federspiels. Federspiel, the greater appellation, and the specific vineyard is Ried, Kolmwitz. How exactly is the...
Aldo, why don't you talk us through a little bit about Steinfeder, Federspiel, Smaragd, as we do like an introduction to the first wine, and then we'll get into the difference between Federspiel and Smaragd as we go through it.
This is where the problem often comes in. Austrian wine law. Well, let me start negative quickly. Austrian wine is often remembered in the wine scene for one wine scandal we had in 1985 and 86.
The petrol.
Well, there's diethylene glycol, which was often shortened called antifreeze.
Yes.
A couple of large corporations stretched the wines. Back in the day, it was very trendy to drink the liter bottle, Spätlese, so really sweet, Muscat. And there was a German scientist who discovered that. Even the Germans were connected with themselves, but you know, we in our Austrian mentality we killed ourselves completely. As a consequence, all the Austrian wines disappeared from the shelves. Obviously, when you have people, you know, like Epic Spiegler or Knoll, if you haven't done nothing wrong and you get wiped out, it's obviously not so fun. As a consequence, one of the firmest wine laws in the world got into place, and even better, the consumer changed its drinking behavior. Rather than buying 3 bottles of wine, cheap, they spent the same amount of money on 1 bottle. And the market obviously responded to that. The quality production came up. In retrospect, many countries are jealous or envious about this scandal because it changed the entire culture of drinking. Now, needless to say, Italians had at the same time also wine scandal with several dead, but they were a little bit more experienced than us in how to handle a scandal.
Yeah, but I think that was a long time ago. That was 30, 40 years ago. And
yeah, but it's funny, people anchor that still.
Yeah, it's still coming out of the shadow.
Hugely, but it's, again, it's like, it's hugely changed to a level where, again, it surpassed everything. And the young generation took over in many cases. So coming back in the Wachau, you have 3 quality levels. One is Steinfeder, one is Federspiel, what we're having here, the first wine, and one is Smaragd. The problem is that comes on ripeness level and on alcohol levels. Steinfeder, you barely find. I think I've once seen here in the US once.
Don't find it anywhere in the US at least.
Yeah, because also with climate change, it's very hard to produce this unless you start harvesting in August.
Below 11.5% alcohol, yes?
Yeah, 12, it goes down. So then from 12 to 12, it starts in Federspiel, and then they come into Smaragd. Now, typically, the automatic thing you would think Smaragd is the best.
Right.
Obviously, it's like thinking a Grand Cru level, you know, you have Village, then you have a Ledi, or you have a Premier Cru, and then you have a Grand Cru. Don't treat it that way. Right. And I'll tell you why. I've brought a bunch of sommeliers over to Austria, American sommeliers, that's 10 years ago. An interesting observation what I've seen is while we Austrians will gravitate to the Smaragd, obviously the highest category, they have a tendency to get a little heavy because of the ripeness. Me personally, often I like Federspiels the best because they're kind of in this middle range and they age also, they maintain the freshness.
Right.
And one of the other things what often Smaragds have, depending on the philosophy of the producer, they work with a little botrytis. Romani Conti played with their Morashes also with botrytis that they added just, 10, 20, up to 25%. In the Wachau, often it's the same, but then it makes them really unctuous.
Yeah.
In case I go too crazy, just pull me back, huh?
No, I see that. It's interesting because Federspiel, I look at the label and I think it's like a region, of course I see the Smaragd all the time. But even that, like, you don't even understand it. It's kind of like, a quality designation as opposed to like actually a region. So it is confusing, but I think, we have 2 Federspiels here and we have 1 Smaragd, and I guess the how do you pronounce it?
Wachau.
Wachau. Okay.
Wachau. Finally, the accent works for my favor. Finally.
Right. You're tight, by the way. It's it's a great region. They have, obviously, like, that's the most known region. You mentioned some of the other regions, but really, I mean, that's where, the most traditionally famous producers are all there, right? Or there's some outside.
Can I ask about how these 3 wines from the Wachau will compare to the other kind of predominantly Gruner Veltliner producing regions of the Comtal and the Kremstal?
Keep in mind, the tricky thing is about the Wachau is a rather warm area. Yeah. With steep slopes, irrigation is often necessary because you have 300 millimeters of rain. That's the same, you have more in Tuscany. Rain. So it can be often challenging, especially in hot vintages, which we had in the past. And For instance, if you taste the first, the Schweiger, it's a 2018. 2018 was kind of very distinct for being very, very hot, especially during the summer. It really cooled off. 2017 was also hot, but it cooled significantly down in September. So the harvest got pushed more in the back. And most producers there harvest from mid-September on. That's what we like. If we start beginning end of August, begin September, it is troublesome.
Let's talk about the wine here. The first wine, the Schweiger, 2018. We have another, the Pichler, 2017. I guess Reed, one of the regions, they're in the same area but different vineyards, perhaps Colmwoods versus.
So I like to point quickly one thing out, because I like to travel. We all do, even though we're being stuck right now. Probably safer that way. One of the most picturesque areas to visit in Austria is the Wachau Valley. And while often when you go to France and you travel, it's very difficult and challenging to get appointments, in Austria it's super easy, no matter where you go. And they're very welcoming. And if you're lucky, they invite you even for dinner. So great restaurants around there. And, you know, flying to Vienna is a direct flight, super simple. It's actually also a beautiful city which likes to eat. It's rich in culture. It's rich in music and architecture. Have you been there, John?
Vienna?
Yeah.
Of course, yes. I went to the Palais Coburg.
Shocking.
A couple of times, you know, but I haven't had the special, you know, I think I would enjoy myself much more with you for like a long weekend than on my own. Trying to navigate, and you know, we've started to do some trips to Europe, and I think, you know, you've given me an idea that we need to do Austria with Aldo one of these years when we get back to traveling.
That could be fun.
Getting around, and you know, we need to do it up and visit some of these top producers, and you know, I think that would be fantastic. So we're starting to do that more, and yeah, look forward to traveling again soon. But right now, you know, we're drinking at home. And tell us what you're tasting in this wine here, this Federspiel from Schweiger.
To me, it's often Gruner Veltliners, it's yellow apples, and you have that here distinctly. It's also a little bit like when you have this cotton candy. That's also typically very distinct Gruner Veltliner nose for me. And often I just tasted with Bobby Stuckey. He says always, he says these cucumbers. Often, you know, this when you put them in mustard, you have that tone on top of it too.
Good.
It's a push.
Strong right there with the yellow apples, cotton candy, and cucumber. That was like a 1, 2, 3 punch. I'm like, I'm reeling here, trying to like get my adjectives together. You know, that was strong. But I agree, I like it.
Yeah, the wine is dry, but there's a richness to it. There's a lot of extract there. The acidity is balanced, but it's not up front. It's not as racy. I feel the alcohol a little bit here. And the wine is rather pleasant.
It's a serious wine for $20. I mean, this is a $20 wine. You know, when I first opened it up like an hour ago, I was like, there was a little bit of a flinty quality that kind of like got in my face too quickly. I was like, whoa, you know, this is like a little too serious, you know, for kind of like the price point. I was like, wow, you know, but then like after it got a little bit of air, it's just like really starting to integrate, and it's very complicated. This is a serious wine for $20.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, put it in context. How many Chablis do you get for that money?
None.
You have to think over it. Or then you start in Petit Chablis.
Right, Petit Chablis you get, yeah.
Ah, great.
No, I mean, that's
no, but look, I put, again, I'm not being disrespectful. Hopefully I don't come around as being disrespectful towards Chablis, because I love Chablis. It's just, in today's world, see, to me as a sommelier, and of course I'm spoiled, but often is when you think about it, you know, what does $20 buy for you? Now, of course, we all get excited to drink Course-Durie, but I get bored at one point because the life is much more fuller than that. You cannot eat everyday caviar. You get bored by that too. Well, I get bored. I want to explore. And to me, this is...
Send me your caviar you don't want to eat. I'll take care of that.
Oh, but you know what I mean. You can't eat this for a week.
Exclusively, at least.
No, it's just, you know, so...
In kind of response to that question, can we talk a little bit about food pairings with this particular wine?
To me on that one, I mean, if you have a little bit of a salad with a chicken breast, super easy. There's nothing to think over it. Even if I sit on the pool or on the beach, that's fun. But there's even racier components in there. So.
And then we also have this, the Pichler, which is from different vintage, same quality.
2017, yeah, but there you taste the huge difference to it. While Kolmitz is in the steep slopes, so there you have more granitic gneiss soil, sorry, and with little limestone components in there. Close to Satz is actually a vineyard which got wiped out. There was an abbey, but it got wiped out with the Napoleon Wars in 1809. If I hope I don't butcher that.
You're on the money.
The battlefields, and that abbey got completely destroyed with the Napoleon troops. And it's, to me, always a wine that has a lot of, it's more sandier soil because it's in a flat and it's very close to the proximity to the Danube. But FX Pichler is arguably probably the most famous producer in that region.
Yeah.
And distinct when Lucas Pichler took over, while FX had tendency to make wines rather powerful, rich, concentrated, Lucas shifts that back a little bit and puts wines into purity, and you pick it up immediately.
Yeah, this is very clean. It's fresh. It dances. It's delicate, but it still has, you know, body. It's a nice wine.
To me, that's the wine I'm not tired of drinking, and I take a sip, and actually like to take another sip immediately again.
Right. Yeah, you can just eat. It's just easy to drink, right? And that's what I think Gruner is. It's just an easy drinking wine. Like I could probably drink a bottle of Gruner, I mean, you know, as quickly as I could a bottle of water, you know, but that's just me. I'm just kind of an exceptional person in that regards. But, you know, I digress, you know, but I mean, it's a gorgeous wine, Pichler. I mean, again, this wine's $35 a bottle. One of the best producers in Austria, one of the best guys, you know, Austria. You talked about history dating back to like Napoleon to 1809. You know, I don't like when, you know, you mention older than 1820, of course, because that's when Acker was founded. So I get a little jealous when you start bringing up 1809 or the 1700s. But, you know, I mean, this is amazing. $35, amazing wine, like great wine, world-class wine at, you know, not a world-class price considering some of the other wines in the market.
I mean, look, this to me, if you want to have a fancy pool wine, good, but you can put this to complex cuisine. This is a complex wine.
So what does this pair with?
This one I would serve at Le Bernardin if you have some fish tartare with that, easy. Ceviche, easy. But you can put this also on shellfish with no problem.
Someone in the crowd asked Aldo, as the kind of the man about Zaltos, what is your preferred stemware, Zalto specific, for Gruner Veltliner? Is it the white or is it the universal? Do you prefer something a little narrower?
That is a very tricky question to ask, to answer, and I'll tell you why. Generally speaking, yes, it is the universal. That's my go-to gloss. However, there's a couple of Gruner Veltliners, for instance, like the third one, I almost go up to the Bordeaux gloss.
Yeah.
Which is my second favorite gloss. And I tweak it, to be very honest. I rarely use the Burgundy gloss because I find personally, and that I'm maybe more honest than I should be, but I believe always in honesty. I think that's the glass which brings out the most, even on white Burgundies. So just when wines become too powerful, you get a little bit more from that. And so on the Smaragd level, the next level, that's where you pick up more. But there's also, if you go up to the Kamtal, so it's a neighboring region to the Wachau, if you go to some single vineyard Gruner Veltliners, I go into the bigger glass. Now, of course, this is a generalization. If someone says, I absolutely love with this wine, the Burgundy glass, this is of course subjective, but that's my personal choice. I'm a firm believer with a glass, you change everything. It's like a speaker to music.
Right.
Can I drink from the Lippi glass these wines? Absolutely. But it's just like listening to your speaker, which you inherited from your grandfather, versus the newest P&O speaker. That's just, it's crystal clear.
I want to say hi to somebody else that said something to me. I want to say hi to my friend Parag in New Delhi. He's in India. Can we bring him
5:30 in the morning.
Wow, that's impressive.
In the morning, 5:30 in the morning. Did you just finish drinking, or are you starting to drink, Parag? What's going on?
I just finished drinking.
You're a better man than me.
Thank you.
How are things in India? How are you doing?
We have a complete shutdown. I think that's working. It's been there for the last 14 days, yeah.
Right,
but
right.
we'll find out when they lift it. But it's grim, yeah.
Well, you know, at least you get to spend more time at home and with the family, and positive things about it. And I hope you have enough wine in the home cellar there.
Yes, yes.
Do you drink a lot of Gruner? Are you a fan of the wines, or are you just kind of learning about it, or what's going on?
I had done a visit to Vienna with a wine group, and we did some of the vineyards. But Aldo is right. The kind of publicity and acceptability which GV should have is not there. People are aware of it, but I think it's highly underpriced and it's great value for money.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit like Albarino also. Albarino right now, it's always in people's mind. It's a supermarket wine, cheap. No one really cares. Similar thing.
So you're saying, Parag, that Aldo needs to work harder on behalf of Gruner Veltliner, and he needs to get out there more and let people know about the great Austrian wines.
And take all the followers of Acker to Austria.
Yeah.
I would like to do that. I mean, honestly, I'm not bullshitting. I drink these wines all the time at home. I drink them all the time. You know, this is kind of like one of my go-to wines, are the Austrian wines. Like I know I'm going to get a good wine, reasonable price, 30, 40, you know, $50 a bottle. And it's just like, I'm so happy. You know, I really
And if you forget about this bottle in your cellar, and it's a secret bin, when you dig it out after 10 years, you're going to be more than happy.
Yeah, they age well. Well, that's, you know, I wish I could share this 2012 with you, but, you know, you have I mean, it's just, you know, you get a little bit
I
of that.
can believe you.
But how's the 18? How's the 18, Alzinger?
Good.
Yeah, at the end of the night, you know, the one word adjectives kind of like.
No, but 12 is also a warmer year, such as 18. But the Alzinger, now it's Smaragd. So you go 12.5 plus, you go on a higher sugar level, and it's the potential alcohol I'm talking about. So they're more mightier, but Alzinger is one of the absolute top stars there. But they always, when you talk to them, they're a little shy, and so are the wines at first. You know, they're not show-offs. They're very, very reserved. And yeah, but the wines are similar. But when you smell in it, there's so much depth, there's so much concentration, there's such an elegance. And people say they're Burgundian. I have a hard time with that because I wouldn't compare this necessarily to Burgundy, nor I wouldn't see a point why.
No.
They're unique. Right, they're unique. I think it's trying to say, well, they're the same quality level.
Yeah.
But
Or it would speak to the site specificity of the vineyards and terroir in that regard. I could maybe see the connection from that aspect to Burgundy, but not as much for the flavor profile or anything like that.
But when you go onto this wine, just texturally, it becomes much more viscous. But look, also the acidity is much more brighter, it's much fresher. There's obviously a lot of dry extract because eventually you have to put the sugar somewhere. The wine is dry, but it's concentrated. But obviously it's a much more powerful wine, but it's finessed.
So we have a few more minutes here. We should open up the floor to people who want to have some questions or comments. I see Wine Anthony, he's a very experienced taster. I want to bring him on. I want to see, do you drink Gruner Veltliner often, or wait, we got you muted. Yeah, I'm muted. Okay.
You're on, Tony.
I do. I'd love to drink more Gruner. Hi, Aldo. Good to see you.
How are you?
Thanks for doing this. Can you talk a little bit about just soil and geology, or the way that you think about it in the region?
Oh, that's just an ambulance passing by. In the Wachau, typically in a generous part, we talk about primary rock, which is a weathered type of gneiss. So you pick typically always, to me, kind of a savory smokiness up. The best thing to probably experience that is that in the vineyard Achleiten, which is arguably one of the absolute best sites in the Wachau Valley. Now, of course, if you go to, depends on the producer, obviously. If you go to FX Pichler, tries Kellerberg, obviously that's his flagship wine. If you go up to Herzberger, you go into Singer Riedel or Honigvogel for Gruner Veltliner, which is a sub-vineyard of Singer Riedel. But again, stylistically, it's like in Burgundy, how they work, how do they manage it? Does that make sense? And depends also, the slopes are rather steep, so they're terraced. And
right.
Often, they added one row within to the wall. So it's really bizarre to see. You have the wall coming up, and there's one wine coming out of the wall and grow up there.
Yeah,
it's super, super hard to work there.
Excellent. Thank you.
So let's bring on Peter Hellman. Peter is a noted wine writer and longtime friend and known person to Acker. Peter, how are you? Good to see you. Hit unmute. We can't hear you. Unmute your button there. There we go.
Now?
We got you.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is, Aldo, it was many years ago that I and my wife first came to your restaurant way down there in the West Village.
I'll see.
And you spoke English okay then, but your choice of words and tenses and specificity has really gotten fantastic. You're more than articulate in English now, especially about wine. So it's great. I admire that. And other than that, I wish I had the wines in front of me. But when I do have the Austrian wines, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but Austria, yeah, Hitler came from there. So am I going to like them? But the answer is, yeah, I like them.
See, this is the other funny part. We had one bad guy, which brought us in so much discredit. But we talk about Sigmund Freud, we talk about Mozart, all these great people, but the one bad guy.
Well, he was pretty bad, that's for sure. And I look forward to the day when I can visit and especially go hear music in Vienna, see the art, and so on.
I go every year back and watch and send sometimes people to specific type of museums, and everybody is blown away because they don't expect anything. And I have a list, I have a document. So if you guys want to go, I tell people where to go and where to eat what. Well, because there's specializations.
I will check it out. When
Yeah.
check you out and get some advice.
Yeah, cool. Anytime.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Aldo, we had a question from Philip who asked, what kind of cheeses would you pair with Gruner?
Sorry, you were quickly off for a moment.
What kind of cheeses would you pair with Gruner Veltliner?
It depends how they aged. I would stay on fresher cheeses, but again, Gruner Veltliner, it's kind of really hard to respond to that question, and I tell you why.
Different styles, different.
The bandwidth what Gruner Veltliner is able to produce is humongous. Very few varieties have that. So you have this on a very lean, citrusy, much simpler wines than we have here, that category. Then you step it up. Then you go up to even a Smaragd level. Then you go into oaked versions, and then you go off dry versions, and then you go into sweet versions. So it's like saying, what Riesling do you pair with that cheese?
Depends on your cheese, depends on your Gruner.
Me personally, just to answer the question a little bit, is I like cheeses more with whites than actually with reds.
Yep.
I think it's a myth because people always believe red wine. Yeah, knock yourself out on a blue cheese with red wine, and see how many wrinkles that puts in your face.
Well, obviously you don't drink a lot of red wine with cheese then.
No, that's just today's cycling.
But you mentioned your barber before, so can you get an appointment with your barber again, or how long?
Can't you tell?
To grow?
Can't you tell?
How long is it going to grow before you just like self medicate with the?
Look, I try not to take myself too seriously, because life is not fun the moment you do that. But it drives all the natural wine people crazy because I finally fit to them.
Oh, you talked about natural wine, and that's an interesting topic. Do you like the natural wines, or what do you think about those things?
I tell you one thing. I used to not. With Wine Simple, I wrote a whole chapter onto it, and I discovered something rather interesting. I observe, obviously, on social media, a couple of friends, and I put a questionnaire together. So I asked them, the ones who are really in the forefront about this topic. And because it's a very divisive topic. And me personally, I was always against that because I have a hard time to deal with these kombucha flavors, with this volatility, and also these mousy components. And to me, the first taste might be okay, the second one okay, but then they become wilted, or the fruit becomes wilted. And I get the idea, I make wine too with Somme Kracher, that project I make. We have 4 different Gruner Veltliners. I like to work also with less chemicals, there's no question about it. But look, if the fruit is rotten, I just don't want to eat it. It's just as simple as that. Now, look, the truth to me is typically in the balance. It's somewhere in the middle. It's not in one extreme or the other extreme. And with Wine Simple, I learned one thing. I interviewed a couple people, and then I had a great interview with Alice Fearing, and which she's obviously on the absolute forefront. And I told her, I said, listen, I'm not going to pick an argument with you. I just like to pick your brain because I might have not seen something which I should see.
It's never a good idea to pick an argument with a woman. I've definitely learned that.
It's a dangerous territory, and with an accent, you do not want to go into that territory.
Yeah, bad idea.
No, but it was interesting because we both actually noticed we came to a point where, look, there is some interesting natural wines out there. There's no question about it. There's also a lot of stuff which is just tagged along and labeled as natural to be sellable. But I think they will become better. And there's some really interesting wines, and especially in Austria, you find that a lot right now.
Yeah, you have to just drink them within 10 seconds of opening them. Right?
Nah, but there's some actually. You'd be shocked.
Okay. I went to Noma, you know, I did the Noma under the bridge when they did.
Yeah, but this is, again.
You drink the natural wines. And yeah, it's like one of the best restaurants in the world. The wines were not, they did not live up to, I'm sure there are some great natural wines, but there's a lot of bad ones.
No. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's also a lot of bad conventional wines. And listen, I'm not selling you natural wine. I'm still kind of reserved, but I came to a point where I say, listen, first of all, as a sommelier, I have not the luxury to judge. If someone wants that, I have to find something. It's easy to write it off, and I don't have that luxury. But also, as a sommelier, and I have to cater that, and I find joy in that, right? But to look for something and to work really hard, because you really need to work hard for that. But also, I'm a firm believer, you have to look also to the classics. So you have to find a healthy balance. So there's a right and place for everyone.
Right. And thank you for being in our place tonight. You know, this has been a great conversation and great to have you with us here. And, you know, we're going to be on Instagram Live in about 13 minutes too. We'll do a little encore session here. And thank you, Aldo. You know, it was great to share my secret passion with you, the, you know, not so secret ambassador of great wine. And but you know, I think the greatest export, you know, from Austria, you know, you're up there with Pichler and the Alsinger and all those other guys, I think.
You're making me blush.
Thank you. We're going to have you again. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. You know, if you want to tune in, go on Instagram Live, Aldo, myself, Acker Wines, another few minutes. And thanks, everybody. Really.
We'll be back on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.